I mean, I use that regularly, and I think it's a pretty generic term for the receiver of products that people want to use. And I always cite, if you look at the movie industry and the people who view movies, consume movies, whatever the term you want to use.
They probably call it content, and they don't call it the movies, and that's another thing about the.
No, so sorry. I was just going to make the point that the Avatar movie was horrendously popular. I don't think anybody can doubt that it's made. It was a box office smash. Now that was rendered with Linux, but yet nobody cares about the fact what it was rendered with. They go to the movie to see the Avatar film, and how it was made and the magic involved in that really is of little concern to them whatsoever. And I think that this is sort of apathy. Now, I use the word consumer because a lot of people don't want to think about the choices they make and don't want to think about the solutions they use, because they always look to the immediate. And who can blame them? Because not everybody is interested in computing, and not everybody's interested in the technical side of computing. That's fair enough. And this is the point I was trying to make before, was that the message that people have about the rights and wrongs of possible choices that you make on the desktop, it doesn't get through to the average user, because 99% of the average user really doesn't read about the choices.
I don't think they're supposed to. That's the thing. I think we don't have to take anything for granted. If you want to drive some change, you have to assume that some things are just basically perhaps the norms, but you have to try and challenge these things based on the objective analysis of the facts. So first of all, I want to say with Avatar, the film, I think most of the work was actually done by proprietary software, and that's where most of the code and the work and things have been going on. And Linux was just the platform of choice. I'm not sure if it's because of cost, but it's probably not just cost, because for anything that requires high computing power, it's usually Linux, and you can always assume that. There is no reason to use Windows there unless you're really, really kind of fanatic about it. In Hollywood, at least, you would be like very much the exception. Why did you use Windows? It's a really strange thing to do. But about the thing you said about consumers and people not caring, we have to. We don't have to, but we probably should try and encourage people to think about issues like, can you access your photos, or if you cannot access your photos, or if you cannot access your files, music files which you bought 5 years ago. Why is that? Why can I listen to the same songs that I listened to 15 years ago, almost 15 years? I think I have MP3s from like 1997 or something. And I can still listen to them, but some people who buy it from iTunes, they might lose their song within a year, even if they cannot even make backups of these things. And I'm not sure if iTunes now allows you to get MP3s for everything, but even the fact that you have to struggle over maintaining something, keeping something you paid for, or at least a copy of something you paid for, it's really quite absurd. And I think we have lots of good things happening because people actually do get burned by these things, and we have ways of explaining to people what the issues are. And I find that increasingly when I hear people, and I find people here who talk about their jailbreaking of the phone. It turns out lots of people jailbreak their iPod Touch as well, and all kinds of things. But they jailbreak these things, and it's people who you wouldn't think as like hackers and people who like openness and kind of insist on breaking the thing, but you do find them everywhere, and they have friends actually helping them do that. And you then can explain to them this notion of openness, as Steve Jobs was trying to talk about openness, like Apple is he wasn't saying Apple is open, but he's trying to say that Google was kind of bogus openness, or that Google didn't give you access to being able to change your deployment, so the code and the phone and everything like that, which is to an extent true, but although you can always get the kind of a fork, or the kind of free version of Android which exists on the web, and you can install it yourself, and you can always just get code and change that and compile that and put it on your phone. But the point I was trying to make, he was very much insisting on the wrong type of openness, and it's a form of deception, trying to insist that people, if you want openness, do you want openness? Well, you must be wanting to use a compiler and to, do configure and make install. And that's the misrepresentation of what openness means. And I think that more deception of this kind comes from companies like Microsoft when they confuse choice with freedom, and they confuse openness with freedom, and they confuse all kinds of notions to use the words that you otherwise use, but to use it their own way, to give you the impression that you get your choices, that you choose, you have the choice of choosing home edition and business edition and ultimate edition. That's lots of choices. You get all these choices, and they can give the impression. They actually do use this deception to do, that you get these different versions, and you get these. I'm trying to think. Even when it comes to the applications they have on Windows, they try to use third-party software as something that gives you an illusion that you have lots of choice, and you're not. And Microsoft is not in control of things. So.
Yeah, I think. I mean, certainly with Windows, the illusion of choice for the end user, I think, in itself is a problem for Microsoft, because I think that causes a lot of confusion. I remember before 7 was released, when they were testing the different products you could buy, the different packages you could buy. I remember a couple of times I was completely lost as to what they were trying to offer. I mean, certainly they did look on the outset to be a lot of choice, but what exactly that choice entailed and what you were getting for your choice was another matter. But I mean, in one respect, Microsoft and any other company is acting like any other company would in the real world. They're trying to sell you one product, which will then lead on to other products and keep you within the whole world of Microsoft or within the whole world of Apple. Because when you're spending your money, they want you dipping into your wallet and paying for Microsoft or Apple or anybody else, their products, and not going elsewhere. I think I think consumer these days is actually quite more savvy than they were 10, 15 years ago. And I always look to the Windows 7 party adverts when there was a massive outcry on the net about how ridiculous and how fake and wooden they were. And I think nowadays, and I use that my favourite word again, which is consumer, but I think they look at these adverts with skepticism. Like I said before, they maybe don't look at the bigger picture as to the choices they are making, but certainly the upfront PR that's pushed to them on the television or on the internet, they're certainly questioning that now more so than they did 10, 15 years ago. And just very quickly, going back to your jailbreaking point on the iPhone, I think that does signify a trend that the average user or the mainstream user is looking to expand out of the closed world that they're put in on whatever platform they get offered. We first saw that, I think it would have been around about 1992, when the Super Magicom was available for the Super Nintendo system. You had a very closed system in the games console, the Super Nintendo. And then the Super Magicom was released in Japan, and people were importing it and finding that they could use their Super Nintendo for a lot of other uses, not just playing games. And I think that was when, for me, it showed that people weren't willing to just take what was given to them and follow the corporate line, as it were, and buy the products restricted to that particular product brand.
I think that if you want to go all the way with this sort of analogy and a history lesson, I think we could actually try and use free software as an example, because Richard Stallman was started. I think the reason he started the GNU project before the FSF was born was some story to do with a printer. I think it was maybe it was a Xerox printer, I'm not exactly sure. He couldn't get access to the code, and he couldn't get the printer to do what he wanted to do with it. And that's an example of a sort of like, an appliance, so to speak, not doing what he wanted the appliance to do, something which was quite simple to implement. He couldn't get the code to be put on it, and he couldn't even get any access to the company itself to convince the company to put the feature he needed. And that's when he basically decided to start the GNU project at the time. And what it actually showed you is this need for hacking, the need to change things for your convenience, to put your programs or to get access to your files, although that kind of expired. He wanted to have this freedom to basically say, well, this is the printer, I paid for it, and I wanted to do certain things. But the company is basically, even though it doesn't own the printer now, or it gave me the printer and I own the printer physically, I don't have an ability to tell it to do what I want it to do and what it's capable of doing. And I find that you have lots of limits like that in real life. You have lots of things that refuse to do certain things you otherwise want them to do. And I think even when we thought about doing this audio cast, one of the things I said is that I do find that there is a certain deficiency of recorders that just take your signals from the whole desktop and try to capture that and put it into